Hi there, welcome back to Let's Design a Drug. I believe this is the 5th installment of this video series. Today we will be looking at some of those ligands that we downloaded from the Zinc database. So, we left off last time. We downloaded about, I think, 2 or 3 million compounds from Zinc database that will screen at the cannabinoid type 2 receptor, see which ones are hits. You should end up with something like this from PowerShell. A lot of my directories have red files. This is okay for me personally. This is because I've downloaded lots of other files with the same names from the Zinc database. You guys probably will not have any red in here because you guys probably haven't downloaded anything from the Zinc database before. But, you know, when it finishes, it'll have all these time points, and mine ended at 9:06 p.m., and then it just left with this end screen. So, to view those files, we'll actually go to the directory in which we save these files, which for me was docking. Okay, this is where I saved all of my files, and we can see this was the original file that we actually downloaded using PowerShell from the web service. And here we have all of these subfolders. If we go into these subfolders, these actually contain the ligands that will actually screen at the cannabinoid type 2 receptor. So for example, if I go into any one of these folders, I'm going to go into AA, and then I'm going to go into this file folder. This will contain a file type of GZ or GZ if you're Canadian. And these are actually the files that we drag into my Aestro to actually dock them to the cannabinoid type 2 receptor. I want to show you that really quick, and we'll kind of talk about this just quickly. You should also have open in your workspace the file that we prepared the protein from. If you guys don't have Maestro, I can actually send this file to you guys that has the minimized structure. I don't see what the problem with that is. So let me know if anybody's interested in me sending this prepared structure. I can actually do that, probably via like GitHub or some open source program that I could just drop it on. But anyways, if you want to open those ligands that we downloaded from the Zinc database, you can simply just grab it, okay, like this, and then just drop it. And it'll download all the structures. It's saying that there have been 2,000 structures imported from the database. And that's great. You know, 2,000 structures is pretty good. Eventually, we'll have to screen all of the 3 million structures. So as we learn more, I'll kind of show you ways to expedite this process a little bit. So anyways, if we want to view any of those ligands, we have to press OK first. And then we have to press Table. And I don't know how to screen record 2 monitors. There must be a way to do that. And you'll have this project table that'll pop up. I kind of want to show you guys both, so let's do this. Oops. But basically we have the structure of the compound, and we also have over here the file that they are stored inside of. If we click through, we can see what each structure looks like. Okay. What I would guess is these are all of the fragment structures that are 200 atomic mass units that we downloaded from Zinc. We downloaded some small compounds, some really small compounds. These are those smaller ones. If we click through, like I said, we can just see each compound. Yeah, a lot of these are very small fragments, but that's fine. You know, I think when I did this selection from Zinc, I pulled in compounds that were like 200 AMU to like 350 atomic mass units, which is fine. So what we can now do is, whenever we're doing one of these in-silico experiments, it's important to initially screen out compounds that are kind of junky, basically compounds that don't have characteristics that we want, right? And one of the ways to do that is a tool in Maestro called QuickProp. QuickProp is a tool in Maestro that tells us certain physiochemical parameters of molecules. And what I mean by that are things like molecular weights, which, atomic mass, things like the likelihood that our molecule will penetrate the central nervous system, the CNS, characteristics like Lipinski's rule of 5, things like will our compound be likely to act as a drug, okay, or just simply a molecule. And we can do that with one of Maestro's QuickProp tools. I'm not going to talk exactly about all of the parameters in QuickProp. There are a ton, so I will link down in the description the descriptors for each one of these if you guys are interested. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to run this job. We're going to make sure that we have use structures from project table selected entries. Let's make sure we only have selected entries that we want. We don't want to have our ligand selected, so we just want to have these 2000 entries selected, which looks good. File name, job name. The way I name these jobs is always what the tranche is that we downloaded these from. And in this case, let's see the tranche. Okay. This is going to be, this is AA, and then AARN is the way I'm going to name this. So it's the name of the first folder, then the name of the second folder, and then these. So AARN is the way I'm going to name this. AARN. Maestro does not like, so for example, the reason that I put an underscore here is that if I put a space, Maestro doesn't like straight up empty spaces, so you have to put some kind of indication. For example, if I want to put the second one, AAABRN, I would put AAABRN for this one. But we're just going to do this one over here. We're going to run this job. Sometimes there are incorrect atom types in some of these structures, which happens a lot from zinc database files. Totally fine. You can just go to all atoms with no lone pair. We want to fix that just in case. So our job just finished. That was that quick little load cursor. And it's just loading into our workspace now. So here we have, I'm just going to open this and make it quite large to kind of see what we're talking about. So here's all the output from that QuickProp calculation right here. And if we scroll over, there are certain parameters that the output file tells us. One of them, for example, is molecular weight. It'll just tell us the molecular weight of that compound. These are all really small compounds. These are like 170 AMUs, which would probably not make very good drugs, to be honest. It's like a fragment of a molecule. It's pretty small. But as we go through our tranches, we'll have bigger and bigger compounds. The ones I like to look at are number of stars. Stars, generally, the more stars you have, the higher the likelihood that your compound is not going to act as a drug, i.e. it won't necessarily cross the blood-brain barrier and have other drug-like properties. But I look at stars, I look at CNS, which is a predictive measure of whether or not the compound will cross the blood-brain barrier. Compounds that are negative generally don't cross the blood-brain barrier, where compounds that are positive CNS, like positive to, I can't really find any of these, all seem to be -1 or 0. That's okay. for now we're kind of just looking at some of these parameters. What are the other ones I look at? I look at Hurg. Hurg is an important Hurg. So Hurg potassium channels, compounds that have a value of -5 or more negative, so -5 or like -6, tend to bind to Hurg potassium channels, and this is generally bad as it causes toxicity problems. Compounds that generally bind to Hurg are aromatic. Compounds that have lots of aromaticity, like benzene rings, like indoles, and then more aromatic compounds like phenols tend to cause problems here. What are the other ones I like to look at? Human oral absorption is an interesting one. This will just tell us basically the percent of the compound that will be able to be absorbed by our body. So 58%, that's not so great. For a drug, we want something like, I try to stick to like known literature values. I like to look at 88%. 88% is kind of my cutoff. So a lot of these compounds eventually will get deleted probably in the next video when we talk about how to filter these things. And that's sort of the things I look at. I also look at the Georgeson rule of 3, which is similar to Lipinski's rule of 5. If it passes Lipinski's rule of 5, it generally passes the Georgeson rule of 3. So, other things that we want to do in this video are, whenever we run a virtual screen, we always want to run control compounds. And these control compounds are compounds that we know bind to the receptor that we're looking at. So for example, a really simple control that you could run is the co-crystallized ligand from the crystal structure, which is the Win55212-2. So here's what we will do. So I computer hand draw the compounds in a program called Spartan. So that's what we'll do now. Spartan is a program that does cost money, but I use the student version. The student version is dope. It's only costs $50. It's $50 for the program. I think it might even be $50 like for life, but it's super cheap. Even if it's like $50 a year, I pay for it. I don't mind paying for it. It's really handy. And no, I'm not sponsored by Spartan to try and sell their software. I just really like their software. So the first thing we want to do is, I like to have sort of I always run dual monitors, right, as I told you guys. So I'll have open my Spartan window, and then I'll open up a internet window. And I'll try and make that a little bit smaller so we can fit a few things in the screen. And I want the structure, basically for a control compound, you can ideally the more controls you have, the better. Just for purposes of like this video, I'm just going to draw one control compound. But basically you choose compounds that you know bind to the receptor and have the same pharmacology. So I'd want to search the literature and look for all CB2 agonists that have relatively decent affinity at the cannabinoid type 2 receptor that are agonists, not antagonists. Okay? So the co-crystallized structure from the crystal structure I chose is Win55212. Okay, to draw a molecule inside of Spartan, we go to File, New Sketch, and we sketch our molecule. So kind of just copy the way the structure is. Not too bad. Let's put our carbonyl here. Let's put our 5-membered ring. Okay. Double bond. Oxygen. There is sort of, when you first use Spartan, there is sort of a bit of a learning curve on how to draw the structure. So play around with it. if you want to try it and you don't want to pay, there's a free 30-day trial that, to be honest, I've used more than I should have before I wanted to actually pay for the program. But it's like $50 for the student version. It's a pretty good deal, I think. We got that 6-membered ring. We can just click that. We've got another 6-membered ring. It looks like down here. Don't worry about the structure. It looks like a mess right now. That will all be fixed once we perform a minimization on it. We need to put a carbon inside of, well, double bond here, I guess. Let's see what else. We need to put a carbon here, and then we need to put another 6-membered ring down here. This needs an oxygen inside of it. This needs a nitrogen right here. We also have to indicate the stereochemistry here. Just wanted to make sure. They don't show the dash or the wedge going out over here. I just wanted to make sure I did that right. So we've got, let's just make sure our structure's right. Always just kind of double check that. Boom, boom, NO, bonds. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. The next thing we want to do is basically convert the structure into 3 dimensions. To do that, all we do is click the eyeglass. Maybe I'll make a separate video about this program, because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Spartan. There's a lot of really cool, interesting things, I think. So maybe at some point I'll make a separate video, deeper dive into Spartan, because I do use it a lot. But for all the purposes of, say, all we want to do is perform a robust minimization of the molecule. Basically, electrons are negatively charged, and electrons, because of that, want to be as far away from each other as possible. So we just want to perform a general minimization. So setup, calculation. We're going to do equilibrium geometry. We're going to use PM3. There's no charge on the molecule. If we were building something like LSD or tryptamine, tryptamines all at physiological pH have a protonated nitrogen. We would put that protonated nitrogen and choose for charge, cation being +1. If you had something like a carboxylic acid, you would have a -1 charge, because carboxylic acids are deprotonated at physiological pH. So we want to run the calculation like this, submit. We will need to save this inside of a folder somewhere. Where we can save this is, let's do this. I always like to be somewhat, I'm not the most organized person, but I do like to be somewhat organized about where I save files. We are in the YouTube CB2. So in the F drive, I have a CB2 right here, YouTube CB2. I have a Maestro. Let's make a new folder for Spartan files. Okay. Inside of here, we can put the name of the compound, which is Win 55212-2. And save that. So now it's going to run that sort of local minimization job just to give us decent atom typing. Okay, now what we want to do is, this is the minimized structure. We want to save this as a .mol2 so that we can use it in our docking experiments. File, save as, mol2, and we're going to save that inside of our YouTube CB2 Spartan, and it'll show up right here. So there's all these different file types you can save them as. I prefer, you can use other file types. I prefer to use Mul2, and I'd recommend using Mul2 over other file types for this purpose. For charges, for now, choose, I like to use natural, but you can use other types of charges in the way it distributes. So the basic idea, right, is that there's electronegativity is a big concept. Actually, probably the most important concept I've ever learned in general chemistry. Just has to do with this idea that certain elements are more electron desiring or wanting than other compounds. So they pull the electrons from another molecule towards them, and because so, they become electronegative, like halogen, like fluorine. Fluorine's the most electronegative element. So if you have a hydrofluoric acid, the reason it's an acid is because the fluorine pulls hydrogen's electron so strongly towards it that it's very easy for that hydrogen to deprotonate and break off. But I'm really just going on a tangent. Stop me from going on these tangents. I like chemistry, I really do. Chemistry was my first love in all of this. I studied chemistry as an undergrad and for a master's degree, so that was my original love in science. I really fell in love with organic chemistry and biochemistry and all these different things. So that file would have saved. Can X out of this. I don't need to save changes because I already saved the Mul2 file. Minimize this. Make that a little bit smaller. We already ran this job. We can X out of here. To pull that file into our workspace and look at it, we can go to File Explorer. You can either go into the folder or go to Recent Files and just pull it into your workspace. And I am curious. I want to go to Table. I also want to rename this as Win 55 212-2, and we could also put next to it, this is our control compound. Like I said, you should add, when you're running an experiment, it's like I spent a lot of time doing in vitro lab experiments, and you always run a control on experiment. The more controls, the better. It kind of validates the actual results. So I recommend whatever receptor target you pick, find other ligands that act as agonists, if you're picking an agonist-bound crystal structure, that show that pretty high affinity and also they're agonists to that receptor, and build those, and we'll kind of run them as controls. I'm kind of curious about two things. What we want to do is you always want to run something called lig prep. So lig prep will place the compound in the correct protonation state. And what I mean by that is, like I said before, like amines tend to be protonated at physiological pH. Carboxylic acids tend to be deprotonated. This tool will do that for us. It'll say, okay, it'll look for things like amines or carboxylic acids, or even like alcohols are a little bit rare because they deprotonate insanely. That's not a problem. Basic pH. That's not a huge problem, though, alcohols or phenols. This will just give us the correct protonation state of the molecule. This molecule, though, it's in its correct protonation state. I can just tell by looking at it. It doesn't have anything that screams, I need to be protonated or deprotonated. But you can run that with OPLS4 force fields, generate possible states at target pH. I usually use physiological pH is like 7.4. If you want to be correct, you could use 7.4. Plus or minus, I usually use 0.5. 7 is okay. You're not gonna have any crazy overlaps, as carboxylic acids and amines are the most common that come up. Carboxylic acids deprotonated at like 2 to 3. Amines a little, pK of an amine is like 9.3, I want to say, so that's not going to be a problem. We could, so here's for computation, if we want to retain the specified chirality, so if we want, when we run this job, we can keep this chiral center the same. We don't want it to form the enantiomer. We can keep this selected. If we wanted to generate all of the different enantiomers, we would select this. For now, I want to keep the same stereo chemistry. Generate at most 32 per ligand. I'm going to use 1. I just want 1 output structure. Yeah, let's leave it at 32. Why not? It's not a big deal. And we can run this job. Oh, sorry, no specified structure. Use structures from one selected entry files. And we can run this job. This, once again, is also a pretty quick job. This shouldn't take too long to run. And this gave us 2 outputs. Cool. I wonder what those structures are like. It gave us both enantiomers. I thought I told it not to. Well. You know, it might be fun to just dock both enantiomers. For now, we'll keep both enantiomers. The control should be where it's fit. It should be this. Oh no, sorry. No, they're enantiomers. Yeah, it gave us both. That's fine. For now, we can keep both enantiomers. It'll be fun. We can actually see how the other enantiomer docks. Because, like, why not? We're doing science, right? I also am quickly just going to run a quick prop job. I kind of want to see what some of the physiochemical characteristics of the compound are. A lot of this is curiosity. Okay, I'm just kind of curious if these break any of the rules. So, stars, this breaks no rules, which is good. That's a drug-like compound. CNS2 is as good as it gets. This is a compound that will no problem cross the blood-brain barrier, which is good for a compound that wants to get into the brain. It's CNS active. The molecular weight, just curious. Did I already? Yeah, 426. Okay, 0.514. Herg. Yeah, here's where we have some problems. Generally, compounds that are like -5 and more negative tend to cause problems at Herd potassium channels, toxicity issues. I don't know in the literature if this particular compound has high activity at Herd, but this, my Aestro is telling us that it would. If I were screening compounds at CB2, I would throw these compounds away in terms of docking. I wouldn't. Typically, -5 is my cutoff, my personal preference. And sort of the reason is, if you look at the compound, it has quite a few aromatic groups. Aromatic groups tend to, the reason the active site of HERG has, if you were to look at the active site, it has quite a few aromatic amino acid residues, and aromatic amino acid residues tend to pi stack with your ligands, and that's why these bind so well, or cation pi if it has a positive charge. So these compounds, I'd actually throw these away. I wouldn't even bother docking these if I were in an experiment. Hey, but human oral absorption, 100%. That's good. That's great. That's really good. I keep 88% or over. The rule of 5, 0. Good. Rule of 3, good. This compound would pass every checkpoint for a compound that I would consider in a virtual drug screen, except for her potassium channel, so it would actually get thrown away. And with that being said, it's a pretty long video. I don't want to drag this out any longer. That's kind of the end of this video. Is kind of just learning about some of these calculations that we run to sort of screen for compounds. The cool part is, although we have 3 million compounds to look at, You'll see that it filters down quite quick when I delete out a lot of these compounds that have undesirable physiochemical characteristics, as we'll talk about in the next video. Until then, I hope you guys learned a bit, and I rambled a lot in this video. Bye.